Hey, what's going on, family? My name is Pastor Vernon, and this is my lovely wife, Pastor Ashley. And we are so excited about these resources that are being provided to give you an opportunity to take the conversations from Sundays further. We know that Sundays can never cover it all, but this is an opportunity for you to keep the conversation going in your homes, at your dinner tables, in your car rides. And ultimately, the purpose of this video is really simple: to engage and to equip people to be able to win at every stage of their love life and in their relationships. So we're going to do that through practical teaching and storytelling, but also through biblical truths that we think are going to meet you right where you are. And ultimately, whenever we talk about getting into a relationship together, there's a major topic that always comes up, and that is finances. And so throughout this video, we're going to quickly, but I believe try to be revelatory about how some practical steps can help you navigate conversations around how do you actually take two and become one? How do you look at your finances? How do you look at your goals? How do you look at your kids? How do you look at excess capital and additional money? How do you look at entrepreneurship? And take all of these things and bring them together so that you can share the same values and management culture of financial stewardship. And ultimately, what we're going to be sharing is about how to develop a unified plan for your finances, your budgeting, your spending, and your saving. Now, before I turn it over to you, babe, I think one of the things that people always ask, right, is why is this important? Why is this an important conversation, particularly as a Christian and as a believer? Did you know that when we look at scripture, there are over 2,000 biblical references to money and possessions? Over 2,000. This is talked about in 11 of 39 of Jesus's parables, and is the most talked about topic in scripture next to the divinity of God when it comes to the New Testament. So what we're seeing here is that Jesus and God and the Bible has a lot to say about how we manage our money. And ultimately, we want you to reconcile this. You cannot honor God if you don't consider your relationship to money. Not just your relationship to each other, but your relationship to money, because it is often one of the greatest opportunities, or it can be one of the greatest obstacles to building a healthy relationship. So Pastor Ashley, tell us a little bit about what we talk about when it comes to financial intimacy.
Yes, we like to think about it in the terms of 4 C's of financial intimacy. And that first C is communication.
Yep.
Communication is vital. And when we look at scripture, we go to Ecclesiastes 3, and it says, there's a time to plant and a time to uproot, a time to tear down and build up, a time to keep and throw away, a time to be silent, and a time to speak. We have to be able to speak and communicate about our finances. And from a financial intimacy standpoint, when we think about communication, one of the first things that we're going to recommend is that you communicate about what your goals are as a couple. What are we working towards as a couple? And that has to be communicated with each other. This is going to help you when it comes to buying a house, saving for children, whether they're college, whether you're even at a different stage of life where you're preparing for your retirement, or maybe there's someone that wants to go into the entrepreneur world, and you guys need to be able to talk through those things. You have to be able to communicate. In this conversation, we recommend that it is visited on a quarterly basis or at least biannually. Now, when we first started, we were talking about it probably on a monthly basis. But hopefully you'll get to a point from a healthy rhythm standpoint that you're communicating about finances at least on a quarterly basis where you're talking through your goals. And it's important that you set aside this time for finances. Now, I'm not saying that every conversation needs to be about finances, okay? We don't want finances to be running your relationship, but we even know for ourselves that when we come into the conversation of finances, we're no longer coming into it with fear or frustration. There was a time that was the case, but now we get to come into that conversation full of faith. Because one, we know that God is Jehovah Jireh, which means he is the provider. So now we come into the conversation being able to communicate about finances, excited for what God can do in our lives.
Absolutely. I think one of the things that we always had to keep in mind too, early on, we had to learn this, but now we were much better at it, which is we come to the conversation as a team. We are not trying to win for our own side. We are trying to win for one side, and that is our union. And so as you think about even this conversation, you probably heard the phrase before, teamwork makes the dream work. Well, guess what? As a couple, you should have a shared dream, and that dream only comes to pass if you work as a team. And so we want to encourage you, see it as an opportunity to say, no, I'm not coming to win. I'm not coming to battle. I'm not coming to get my own way. I'm coming to actually be in partnership, right? Because this is a union and we have shared goals, shared dreams. And the only way we're going to get there is as a team. What's that second C of financial intimacy that we talk about?
Okay, so we get into the details. That second C is you must be able to create a monthly budget.
Right.
You got to be able to tell your money where you want it to go instead of looking around and saying, where did it go?
Where did it go?
Where did it go?
Yeah.
We want to be able to tell exactly dollar for dollar where we want our finances to go together. And to do that, it is helpful for you to do a monthly budget. And before you do that, I would suggest that you evaluate your needs versus your wants.
Yeah.
Okay?
That's good.
Your needs versus your wants. And after that, you'll be able to determine how you can give, how you can save, and how you can live. But it's important to sit down and have that conversation. And as you develop that monthly budget, one of the things that we also recommend is you make sure that you set aside at least $1,000 for emergencies.
Yeah.
Now, I am speaking of emergencies. That's not the new shoes that just dropped. But I'm talking about...
Unless you budgeted for it.
Unless you budgeted for it. Focus on making sure that you have at least $1,000 set aside for emergencies. Things come up. Life definitely happens. And so as you're thinking through your budget, make sure that you are prepared for emergencies. And one of the other things that we say when it comes to your budget is we are so big on making sure that people are eliminating their debt.
Yep.
We want you to be able to walk in financial freedom. So as you're preparing your budget, think about ways that you can demolish the debt that you have, because we want you to walk in that financial freedom. And one of our approaches that we say is to use the debt snowball approach. And using that approach, you're going to take your smallest debt first, and you're going to build and put as much money as you can towards that debt. Now, you're still paying off your other debts as well, but you're putting extra money towards that smaller debt. And then you'll continue to build on that. And we always recommend starting with the smallest debt because you're able to celebrate the win as a group, as a couple. You're able to say, we did it and we can continue to do it even more. And over time, you'll be able to continue to build this legacy, this life of legacy that you're walking in financial freedom. You're able to prepare for those who are closely connected to you, like your family and your friends.
Can I just pause there? And I just want to emphasize two things that you said that I think are vital. Number one, you talked about legacy, right? Which is all about our why behind the what.
Yeah.
Often when we start talking about finances, we start talking about what we need to do. So it's like what you need to do and what you need to do. And instead of that, we need to start with our why, right? Like there was a great book that came out years ago called Start With Why by Simon Sinek. And I think one of the major principles of that book is that when you know your why, it motivates you to keep going. It inspires you. It gives you something to fight for and to stay connected to. And so I think as a couple, you need to be thinking about that as well. What's our why?
Yeah.
Like if it's legacy, if it is that we had student loan debt and we want to see that our children don't have student loan debt, that's a reason to sacrifice. That's a why. Maybe it's like, man, we recognize that we're building generational wealth and we have goals to make sure that we move beyond a poverty mindset. That is a why. So that when you sacrifice the shoes, when you choose not to go on the extra vacation, when you choose to say, hey, I'm going to sacrifice eating out as much, you know why you're doing it. I also want to just add, you said something about, paying off debt, and you used the word demolishing it. I want you to know we're not telling you something we heard. We're telling you something we've lived. As a couple, we paid off over $150,000 in debt, right? Mostly mines. But one of the things that was amazing was as we came together as a team, we really saw not only the favor and the hand of God show up in that process, but again, we accomplished that goal and it opened up so many opportunities for us to live in the freedom that God always intended for our finances. So again, just wanted to emphasize that. All right, take us to number 3.
Number 3 is we want to encourage you to seek counsel.
Yeah.
Seek wise counsel. So definitely seeking God first, but then seeking wise counsel. We want to make sure that you are listening and advocating for people who are going to give you the advice that you need. There's wisdom with having people around you that have been through this before, who have experienced success in finances. it's certainly important for you to be able to seek that wise counsel. And in Proverbs 13:20, it says, walk with the wise and become wise, for a companion of fools suffers harm. So this even comes to play when we talk about communication, we talk about creating that monthly budget. There are people around you who have done this before. Yes. And so it's important that you seek that counsel out. Now, I will also say on the other side of that, make sure that if you have the wisdom and if you have navigated through finances successfully, that you're also being a helping hand to other couples, to other individuals, and being a wise counsel to them.
Absolutely. And you hit the nail on the head. I love it when you talk about finances. I think it is an opportunity for one. I see so much of your passion in your heart for not just our family, but for the family of God and the kingdom citizens that you know are called to walk in greater legacy and freedom. But one of the things I think that's so important about this idea of counsel is what you hide, you cannot heal. What you hide, you cannot heal. And I think one of the greatest scars of our society, particularly if you come from a disenfranchised or a community that maybe has been marginalized community people group, it is so imperative that we understand that one of the great scars that we carry is the financial struggle and financial bondage. And I think one of the things that you've constantly remind our home, as well our personal home and our spiritual home, is that it is so important that we heal from the things and the principles that often work against our ability to walk in full wholeness, which is a part of it. Wholeness is finances. So I just think it's so imperative that we don't forget that when it talks about who we walk with, we have to be very mindful, open our ears and open our hearts, because what's at stake, right, is legacy, is future. And so much can be done when we just open ourselves up to receive the wisdom of others. All right, tell me the last C.
That last C is contentment.
Yeah.
Now, we've talked a lot about goals today, and they are great. But we have to remember to be content in all things. Being able to be grateful for what we already have is going to be pivotal in this financial intimacy journey. Now, I do want to say, as we think about contentment, I want to remind you that comparison does kill. Yeah. And sometimes we are so focused on the next person and what someone else has that we are not content in what we actually have. And also, we don't even know what happened behind the scenes. We just see people's highlight reel and we want to compare their journey to our journey. And that's just not healthy. So we want to make sure that you are living a life of contentment. Be able to even just list out how God has kind of provided for you over the years, through the years, and the things that are intangible, the things that money can't even buy, to be content in those things.
Yeah, I think it's just critical. Actually, in Philippians 4, I think what's so interesting is Paul is writing, and he says, I've learned, in one translation, he says, I've learned the secret to how to live life. Yeah. Now, whenever somebody tells you they've learned a secret, right, you got to lean in, you got to listen. And he says the secret is to be content in all things. When he's talking about I can do all things through Christ that strengthens me, he's not just saying I can achieve goals and accomplish dreams. He's saying that I have learned how to be content when I have little and when I have much, when doors are opening and when doors are closing, yeah, when money's coming in and I have margin and when I got to be strict to my budget. I've learned to be content in every season. And that's true freedom. True freedom is not, God, if you keep giving me more, I'll be okay. It's trusting that whatever God has in your hands right now, he can bless and he can multiply, and being content with where you are. Ultimately, all that we've shared, these 4 C's of intimacy: communication, create a monthly budget, contentment, and seeking wise counsel, are all essential. So here's the challenge for this video. I know some of the times we're like, pick 2 things, pick 3 things. I'm going to tell you right now, pick all these things, okay? So the challenge of this video is to go through all 4 of these C's of intimacy, financial intimacy, and just ask yourself, okay, what's my monthly budget look like? Okay, when are we going to set a time to communicate about our finances? To say, hey, who is 1 or 2 people that we trust? Maybe we admire what they've done. Maybe we know that they have accomplished some things that we're trying to navigate, but who can we bring into the conversation? And then lastly, what are some things we can already be grateful for? Because if God doesn't do more, he's already done enough. And so we're hoping that you would take this challenge and let's continue to grow in our financial intimacy. We believe that this is one of the ways we become whole in God, whole in our faith, and we believe it's going to be a blessing to you and yours.